Okay, well, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Neil Zipser from the Knox Company. We'd like to thank all of you for taking time to attend today's webinar. We also hope that everyone on the call today, including your families, friends, and colleagues, are staying safe and healthy. And for a lot of us, that means just staying sane right now. We got a great speaker lineup, and we believe today's topic is one of growing in importance. If there is one positive outcome of the pandemic, it has been that there's been less hostile events in schools. But we do know when life gets back to normal, and hopefully that'll be soon, unfortunately, we'll again be faced with this critical issue. If any of you would like to ask questions during the webinar to any of the speakers, please submit your questions in the Q&A box. We'll get to as many questions as we can in our Q&A session. Our first speaker is Mark Williams. Mark is the Vice Chairman of the Partnership Alliance for Safer Schools, also known as PASS. Mark, take it away.
Thanks, Neil, and thanks to Knox for hosting this event today. I'm glad to be with you, and I was proud to be part of Knox's Rapid Access Council conference about a year ago in Florida. Neil, I'm not moving here. There we go. All right, you went past all my pictures, and that's fine because that's what I used to look like. But I've been involved in the life safety community for 30 plus years. Most recently, I started with the Partner Alliance for Safer School, which is a volunteer organization. I've been an advisor with the Secure Schools Alliance. I am a technical committee member for NFPA 3000, which most of you are probably familiar with as the ASHER standard, Active Shooter Hostile Event Response. I taught codes for a number of years back during my career in Michigan, both life safety and fire. My background was primarily in the door and hardware industry and the openings industry, which has been very helpful as we've moved in to providing safe schools guidance through our PASS organization. PASS, I want to start out, just give you a quick overview of PASS because I'm sure many of you are not familiar with us. And then I want to touch on the access control piece of PASS and what we do there, and how some of the PASS approach really touches on the whole subject of rapid access. But back in 2013, on the heels of Sandy Hook, the Security Industry Association and the National Systems Contractors Association were both heading down parallel paths around safe schools. They were being inundated with calls from schools, asking questions. What do we do? How should we respond? Any number of questions. They ended up deciding that they were going to combine their efforts, and they formed PASS, which is a nonprofit coalition. So we're a 501c3. We have a cross-functional team of nearly 30 people from across public safety, school security, access control, lots of subject matter experts, architects, superintendents, a really wide range of folks that are involved in our stakeholders in the safe schools conversation. We focus on best practices, and I'll touch on that a little more. And we also focus on effective and appropriate approaches to school safety and security. So I think those two terms are really important to us. Well, they're really important to us because we recognize that if you've seen one school, you've seen one school. School risk profiles vary widely, even within a given district. So what we wanted to provide was a roadmap to help schools provide effective and appropriate solutions to their access control or to their safety and security needs. So I want to start with why. I usually start my PASS conversations with why does PASS exist? And if you're familiar with Simon Sinek, this is he has a TED talk called Start With Why that I think any organization would benefit from taking the 18 or 19 minutes that it takes to watch that video. But I'm going to start with why. Why did PASS come about? Well, studies show that our children's learning improves when they feel safe. That has been documented. There are multiple studies out there that show us that. But let's talk about, what does the current environment look like? in schools. So in 2015, we had 52 million students in our public schools. We had 6 million teachers. We had 827,000 violent events that were reported in our schools, and our source for school statistics and violence statistics is the National Center for Educational Statistics, NCES. There were 10% of our teachers, 10% of those 6 million teachers were actually threatened in the 2015 school year, and 6% of them were actually assaulted. When we talk about safe schools, most of the time the conversation sort of centers around active shooters. In 2015, less than 0.1% of schools experienced an active shooter incident. So what PASS has done is really taken an all hazards approach. So we're not to diminish how severe and horrible active shooter events are, but also recognizing that there's 827,000 violent events that happen in our public schools every year that, you know, aren't necessarily an active shooter. We take an all hazards approach. This, I had a chance to get the most recent NCES publication, and you can go on the website and download it. It's about 250 or 300 pages. But in the 2017-2018 school year, there were 962,300 violent incidents, which is an increase over the 827,000 from 2 years previous. 476,000 were nonviolent, but those nonviolent incidents include possession of firearms, explosives, other weapons. So it's really important to kind of understand the context of what a violent incident is, what a nonviolent incident is. And you can see there were 3,600 incidents involving firearms or explosive devices. That's just of the reported incidents. So trying to put some context around what's going on in our public schools. So what the schools, as the calls were coming in and as we were focusing on helping schools and providing this roadmap that we call the PASS guidelines, we really kind of boiled the questions down that were coming in from the schools. Their needs were centered around assessing their current state. So what do we look like right now? How are we doing? What are best practices? And the best practices that we talk about in the PASS guidelines are best practices from other schools. These are things that have been done and tried and have been vetted and tested. So these are vetted best practices. What are those? They wanted to know. They wanted to know what other options were there, even within those best practices. And they wanted us to help them avoid pitfalls. You know, school administrators are experts at providing education. They're not necessarily experts at safety and security. And we sometimes talk about how when we go into a school to meet with them, we can usually tell which sales guy was there first. You know, if they have a lot of cameras, or if they have a lot of card readers, or if they have, you know, barricade devices, God forbid. But that's one of the pitfalls we try to help schools avoid. So we focus, and the guidelines, this is what the document looks like. We focus on physical security and life safety. We focus on vetted best practices, which I mentioned, and we focus schools on taking a layered and tiered approach to their safety and security. So layered security is not a new concept. I love this photo. It's a photo of a 15th century medieval castle. And here, when we talk about layered security, this is a great visual of layered security. When we talk about layered security, it works from the outside in. And what we do is we provide layers, and within each layer, we want to have elements or components that deter, detect, and delay adversarial behavior. Very visual here, how to deter, detect, and delay adversarial behavior with the moat, with the towers, etc. So to put it in context with PASS, these are the layers that we have developed and put into our guidelines. We start with a district-wide layer, which is by far the largest layer. Then we move, as you think about entering a property, and this is particularly important with rapid access. When you're entering a property perimeter, what kind of security do you find there? If it's a locked gate with a key, that's gonna impede your getting into and rendering emergency services to those that may be inside. We move from property perimeter to the parking lot perimeter, to the building perimeter, to the classroom interior perimeter. So again, outside in, and within all those layers, we talk about components. These are the things that deter, detect, and delay adversarial behavior. And unfortunately, some of them can deter and delay your gaining access to the building. So I want to talk a little bit about how we integrated rapid access to our guidelines here in a minute. But if you think about all 7 of these components we talk about in each layer. So it's policies, procedures, people, roles, and training. Those are the 2 most important things in the guidelines, and over half of the guidelines are dedicated just to that. Then we have an architectural component, communication component, access control, video surveillance, and detection and alarms. So if you download our guidelines document, it's a free download, and I'll tell you how to get to that in a minute. This is all kind of outlined on page 7 in the in our guidelines document, and we talk about deter, detect, delay. The way the guidelines are laid out, on the previous slide, you notice the classroom interior perimeter. So that's the layer. There's the tiers. So when we were talking about options earlier, schools want to know what their options are, tier 1 through tier 4. This is the component. This happens to be the communication component within the classroom layer. And then we have all the best practices listed below with increasing security as the risk profiles dictate. You may need tier 1, which is basic stuff, to tier 4, which is a higher level of security. So we increase security as we move across the continuum. So every layer and every component is laid out exactly like this in the guidelines tool. That's one of the reasons schools like it so much and have really adopted it. We have over 4,000 downloads within the last year and a few months. Schools downloading this because it's easy to understand. There's a narrative for every one of these best practices in the guidelines. So I'm going to move on. In the absence of national standards, PASS has really sort of been elevated to a national standard. These are some of the organizations that endorse and reference PASS. We worked with Marjory Stoneman Douglas after their tragic shooting. We went down and helped them establish their safety and security plans. We worked with the state of Florida as well in that process. Ohio has recommended PASS in their report and recommendations. The federal report on school safety that went to the president back in 2018 references PASS. NFPA 3000, we're referenced in Chapter 5 and Chapter 9 there. National School Boards Association, the list goes, this is just a partial list. The government released schoolsafety.gov. PASS was the only non-government reference and resource listed in that document, and we worked with them in the onset when they were first beginning to pull that resource together. So I know that's kind of quick. It's a thumbnail sketch. I'm putting kind of 5 pounds of stuff in a 2-pound bag here, but and I'm moving kind of quickly. But I'll show you where you can go get more information and how to get a hold of me. The new best practices. So we're getting ready to introduce our 5th edition of the guidelines. And in the 5th edition of the guidelines in the district-wide layer, there are 2 pieces that we have added in the will be adding in the 5th edition. One is talking about a zone emergency response system, and I'll touch on that in a second. And we also talk about rapid access credential vaults, which is Knox product, is a well, call it a Knox box. We are product agnostic and manufacturer agnostic in PASS, but you can see we write our specifications and our narratives around performance, and this is the term. I think Knox actually helped me use this in our guidelines. This term. The zone emergency response system is really, and at the Knox Rapid Access Council, there was a presentation on this. You know, not all schools are kind of set up the same way. In the South, we have open campuses, multiple buildings. That was the case at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. When we talk about universities, their campuses are open and multiple buildings. The challenge is, how do we get our emergency responders to the right place on a campus, on an open campus, or even just a single school building that may be very large, have a very large footprint. The zone emergency response system we talk about in our guidelines has actually reduced the response time by, on average, I think about 80%. So if you think about taking a property and dividing it into 4 zones, A, B, C, D, and then dividing each one of those A, B, C, D zones into 1, 2, 3, 4, you can start to get the picture of what a zone emergency response system is. It helps you all get to your do your responding in a much quicker way and get to those in need faster. We talk about the rapid access security vaults, and one of the things that's coming out in NFPA 3000 is a recommendation that there be more than one. You don't want to have to go to the flagpole entrance to get into a rapid access security vault if you need to be way on the other side of the building or on the other side of campus. So it's a lot about locating these things strategically to save time when you're responding to an event. So I'm going to wrap up here, but this is our website. It's passk12.org. You can send me an email there. You can download the PASS guidelines and the checklist tool. There, it's a free download. We also have white papers available. We have a position on barricade devices. I'm sure many of you are dealing with barricade devices, which are non-code compliant. We talk about lockdown drills. There are basically no standards around lockdown drills out there today. We have several school security folks on our council and in our organization. One of them was the school security director of the year last year. His name is Guy Grace. Many of you may have heard of Guy or heard him speak. He's a nationally recognized expert on school security. He's actually the one that went down to Parkland and worked with Parkland on their plan after their event. But Guy has been doing lockdown drills for going on somewhere between 20 and 30 years. And we decided to publish a lockdown drill white paper to help schools understand what those need to look like and how we need to help our students prepare in the event that they need to shelter in place. And then there's a number of other best practices that you'll find on the website. But for now, I think I'm going to wrap up, and I'm going to thank you once again for your participation today. Thank you for what you do every day to help make our schools safe. And thanks again to Knox for the opportunity to be with you here today.
Thank you, Mark. And Mark will be around for questions following our next 2 speakers. Our next speaker is Scott Shore. Scott is the Fire, Health, and Safety Inspector for Collier County, Florida Public Schools. Scott, thanks for joining us today, and it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Everybody hear me okay?
Sound great.
All right. My name is Scott Shore. I'm a retired firefighter from Pinellas County, Florida. I came down to Collier County as the fire inspector, and I oversee all the fire safety and health safety for the entire school system here in Collier County. I've been an inspector and a firefighter since about 1992, and so I have a lot of experience in the field. So first thing I wanted to talk about is after Stoneman Douglas, there were some things that they wanted us to implement to give us a little bit more of a layer in the school system so we could verify things, because one of the events that happened at Stoneman Douglas was the fire alarm system went off. And we went into NFPA and we initiated what they call the positive alarm sequence. Now, this is in NFPA 72 guidelines, and it was approved back in 2007. And what this does is allows you to put a delay into the fire alarm system so you can go investigate while it's monitored on campus. So this is our system that we put in, and when the fire alarm system goes off, a pole station is activated someplace on campus. There's a 15-second delay that has to be acknowledged at the panel for the staff in the front office, which allows them to suspend the alarms from going into full activation so we have time to investigate. And NFPA gives you 3 minutes or 180 seconds for you to go in and look that over. So if you have an activation and everything, this allows our youth resource deputy that's on campus or the administrative staff to go out and check that pole station, what the location is, because they're all identified by number, and they can go in and find out whether it's a false alarm or whether we actually have an activation or whether it's just something malicious going on. Now, this does not suspend any of the automatic devices. It just takes the pull stations out of the system and gives you that element where you can go in and verify if it's a pull station or something else is going on the campus. Now, the second thing that we implemented in Collier was the video doorbell system. We locked down the entire exterior of our campus, and we have a single point of access now for the video doorbell. And the secretaries or administrative staff in the front office utilize this prior to granting access on the campus, and it requires you to use your photographic ID, usually a driver's license, and you present that and state what your purpose is before they allow you access into the front office on the campus. All the other gates around the campus, all the other doors are secured automatically by access control. Now, and one of the other levels of security is all the elevators on campus require key card access. So this stops people from transitioning throughout the building from level to level or floor to floor, and forces people to use the staircases for as they move through the campus. The only people that get access to this are people that are handicapped or have some type of disability, so they can go up and up for basically special needs or disability or things of that nature. And one of the other things we did is our biggest problem that we ran into in Collier was the Knox box system is what we put in place. But before, we had this old super box system, which was divided between the 3 fire districts on campus or in Collier County. The problem we ran into is I didn't have a key to access anything that's contained in the box. I couldn't verify what was in the box. So I had to go talk to each fire district if I needed to access or I had to change keys or anything like this. And I thought this was kind of a showstopper for me, being that I was a firefighter in my previous profession. So I went to the superintendent, and we came up with a way to and talk to the fire departments. So we upgraded to a Knox system. Now, Knox has a dual key system where the fire departments have a master key, which they use in their entire fire district. But we have what's a submaster that works off of the Knox box. So this gave us access to the contents in our box and everything in the Knox system. So we can do key management, and we can upgrade master keys. We can upgrade our electronic swipe cards that give people access on the campus. And this has worked out very well, and the fire districts were accepted with this. And Wendy Facteau from Knox helped us put this in place. And it took us about 6 months to retrofit our 63 buildings in the campuses. So we have Knox in place where I have a key, can access anything, and the fire district still has their ability to go in and access anything for our campuses. We were also able to add EMS into this, so now EMS has access in the event fire gets into the building before them. They don't have to do radio communications. EMS can get into the Knox system, and they also have access to a key because of this. So those were just some of the things we implemented in Collier County, which have worked very well for our school system. Now, I believe that's all I've got to talk about as far as the schools, but I think Carl Thompson is up next, and Carl's the fire marshal for Pasco County. So Carl, take it away.
Well, thank you, Scott and Mark, for going before me and answering and resolving all the issues. So all I got to do is just basically say, let's go to the next slide. And that's a great picture of a school, elementary school, which shows where they think of by educational level, but that's okay. Let's go to the next one and talk about the need for rapid access. Anybody who's been involved in any kind of an event at a school or any building recognizes that we can't resolve the problem until we get access to the problem, whether it be a fire, an Archer situation or Asher situation or whatever. So the Knox or the lockbox program, the access program, gives us the ability to get in quickly. Some of the outstanding statistics indicate there's been a lot of activity in schools since 2009. So over the last 10 years, we're seeing 288 school shootings, 417 mass shootings in the US. And so some of the points that we have to be concerned with, we'll start with the easy one. At the bottom of the screen is the Knox key, which gets us into the door. Then we have remote power. I'm skipping the blue box for right now and come back to it. Knox also has, or the access control can have padlocks and gate keys, elevator boxes so that you have the elevator keys to be able to control and capture the elevator. I really like the pre-plan box because that has all your pre-plan information in one box. I mean, often you don't have the first in engine company as the first responder because they're committed to something else. And we have the FDC caps, but we'll get to those in just a second. So here in Pasco, after an FFMIA meeting, I want to say 2 years ago, when Knox introduced the blue box, I brought it back to Pasco County School, and they were very interested in it because we were having an ongoing battle about how we can fortify the schools and still allow fire departments to have access, but not give access. You know, of course, the sheriff's been trying for years to get access to our lockbox program, and we have said no, and there's a magnitude of reasons we don't want necessarily to give access to people who are not in the fire department, from search and seizure issues to control of the key and how they're locked up. But Knox came out with an incredible idea, a submaster that our key will work on, and then we can have a sub key that will unlock the blue box. Now what we did is we went one step further and we changed at the schools all of the Knox boxes to the blue box key. So that way the sheriff's key or the school board key will unlock either Knox box at the school board or at the front or back door. So that gives 2 points of entry into the schools, and it seems to be working well. And I would also say that although this program is about schools, this could be applicable to other government buildings like courthouses and city hall and county administration buildings, where you would be able to give access to both law enforcement and the fire department through the same system. And so far we've seen a lot of interest from the sheriff's office about alternative programs. So busing replace a strategic location. Yep. The key to success is the rapid entry. And you know, we're actually trying to expand, on a sub note, we're trying to expand the program here in Pasco County. the access program to the home Knox box. So we are in Knox County, so for the record, but we're trying to get the home Knox box up and so that we have access into many of the people's homes, particularly the elderly who tend to be high demand. You know, the worst thing in the world is the, hey, I've fallen and can't get up push button. So then the fire department responds, but we really can't get access without breaking down the door. And that's not really all that good of a solution. So with the home program, it gives us the opportunity. And the blue box program at the school still maintains the person's, the key integrity to the fire department only into the homes. Okay, so that brings us to the FDC program, which is another program that has it, which is the next slide. There we go. One of the problems we see with the FDCs is the amount of junk that can be stuffed in there, including I have heard cases where the recreational pharmaceutical vendors use it as a distribution mailbox. So you go give them the money and then you go over to one of the FDCs and pick up your party pack. That Knox has a series of locks for both Storts and 2.5-inch thread connections that will protect the Knox, and the fire department has the key to protecting it. I love the picture in the upper right there with all the garbage in the program, or in the FDC connection. With that, I'm going to say that's going to bring us to questions. So let's.
Yeah, I've got a few questions here. I guess the first one would be for Scott or Carl, but we've been talking about putting keys in the boxes. What other things do you recommend putting in there? Do you recommend putting blueprints or access cards or anything like that?
I would recommend, if you're going to do that, go with the pre-planned box. The Knox box, the key box is relatively sized, but it's not big, and so it'd be very difficult to wad a series of blueprints up and stuff it in that box. But you do have the pre-planned box that we saw in the couple slides back, document cabinet.
Okay.
I would add to that, Neil, this is Mark, that one of the past recommendations is that there are, from a standpoint of blueprints, the facility mapping piece that was under the architectural component on one of the slides I showed talks about noting, where are the Knox boxes located? Where are the defibrillators? Where are the, fire extinguishers, and also providing digital copies of the floor plans of the building. So as you're going to a site, you know exactly where you're going and exactly where everything is.
Scott, I believe this next question is for you. For the delay in fire alarm activation within NFPA 72, what is the reference number from 72 about schools? I really like that.
I don't exactly have that in front of me right now, but if you send me an email that was on my page, that was on the PowerPoint presentation, I'll be glad to look that up and forward that information to you.
It's going to be NFPA 101.14.3.4. Stand by while I get the rest of it. Where it says positive alarm sequencing is permitted.
Right.
And 72 tells you how to wire it up and everything, but the actual code reference is going to be in NFPA 3. Come on, Carl.
Hey, Carl, while you look that up, I'm going to ask another question. We'll come back to you. Is that okay?
That's fine. That's perfect.
Okay. Question about, we've got 2 Florida schools on here. Maybe this is for you, Mark. Is the seriousness about improving law enforcement access and overall school security being taken seriously throughout the United States as much as it should be, or are there some states such as Florida and Colorado that, for whatever reasons, have kind of taken the ball and run with it?
That's a really good question. I think that you'll find that there have been a lot of activity around driving the conversation. I live in Colorado. Guy Grace is from Colorado. We have a couple of our board members that are located in Colorado, but it's it's almost a grassroots type of an approach. And what we're trying to do with PASS is bring that into the conversation and saying this is a critical piece, folks, because when we're talking about active shooter events, those events are over in 5 to 6 minutes. And if we can cut the response time for emergency responders by 80%, that is, that's all moving in the right direction. That's an incredible improvement. And as you all know, the quicker you can get to the right place, the more assistance you can render. So we have incorporated into our guidelines. We talk about it. It's in our checklist tool. So as schools go through and assess their current state, that's part of the process. So I don't know what to tell you, with regard to Colorado and Florida, other than saying Max Schachter, who lost his son at Parkland, is a member of our council. He is active with the state legislature in Florida. Guy Grace is from Colorado. He is actively and widely sought as an expert on school security in Colorado for sure, and in other parts of the country. But it's just it's frustrating because it's an easy thing to do, and it's not an expensive thing to do, and it's a highly effective and appropriate thing to do, kind of going back to one of my first slides. So good question.
I guess as a follow-up question of that, it seems like, at least from the outsider point of view, that the Parkland shooting kind of rewrote the rules on everything. And we saw from Carl's slides and your slides, there's been no shortage of shootings out there, school shootings. Why was it that Parkland kind of got everybody's attention?
Well, I have my opinion on that. I'm not sure there's a consensus, but I think the fact that it was so heinous, and there were parents, well, the students for sure. You remember the students ended up in Washington, D.C. They ended up in front of Congress, as we have as well. And I think there was a lot of national publicity on it that really kind of started driving the conversation there. But I can tell you that Max Schachter and Noel Glaser, another father of a student at Parkland, was actually a survivor, have been very active in setting up nonprofits to promote and safe schools, and having an approach, having a guideline, having a roadmap, kind of knowing what to do, where do you go and what do you do, kind of thing.
Okay, I've got a question here, and also, by the way, we have on the webinar today Wendy Fecto, who's Knox's territory manager in Florida. And I think the question's best for you. If a school wanted to start a program up, what's the first step? Do you get police involved? Do you get fire involved? How do you go with it? What's your recommendation there?
I think the thing that we found the most successful in the state of Florida, as well as Georgia and some other areas that we've been working, is making sure that we get together the fire department, the police department, sheriff if needed, and the school, so that together they design the solution rather than each individual trying to figure out what's best. And that way they can look at where are the access points that first responders need to get into. What we did after Parkland is when we created the Blue Box program, which Carl referenced as far as us presenting that to the Florida 2 years ago. And we found that secondary access point is of great importance, because when adrenaline is pumping, you want to make sure that police easily identify it, and it looks different than the standard Knox box. And as has been mentioned, the other thing we really needed to discuss was the access part, because whether you do a submaster, as we've talked about on this call, but there's other options as well for the keyways. So making sure you involve your local rep from the Knox company would be very beneficial as well, so you know what options to bring to the table.
You know, Neil, I would add to that, Wendy, that was an awesome answer. In the guidelines, we talk about 4 steps. And step 1 is forming a team, which was the first thing Wendy talked about. And it references, you know, who should be on that team, and then how you expand beyond that. So another good reference, or another good resource for you.
Yeah, I want to jump back in just real quick and say that the final report from Sandy Hook showed that no active predator has penetrated a regular lock. So the most effective security in the school is just the regular key locks on the doors and keeping them locked, which means then that whoever the responders are need to have keys so that they can get into those rooms, emphasizing the importance of multiple keys and the lockbox program, so that those keys are stored somewhere and able to be distributed. With that, I'll also say that I found the answer to positive alarm sequences in NFPA 101, the Life Safety Code, Florida Fire Prevention Code 101, chapters 14 and 15, 3.4.3.1.3. So that gives you the access to do that. We've done that at several of our schools here in Pasco. You know, again, we've had a lot of success because the school administrators, school superintendents are very concerned about this. So it's not a hard sell. And this is a lot better than all of the gizmos and gadgets that people are trying to deploy on the doors. And it's still, you know, one thing I want to emphasize about the lockbox program, it still allows us access into the rooms. One of the problems, and I love the picture back in the first set of slides where it showed the bully beating up the kid. Can you imagine if you have one of those door gizmos and that bully dragged the kid into the room and deployed the 1.5 inch and 3/4 fire hose over the closer arm and pegged the door and all of these neat gadgets that are out there, and just waylaid on that kid for, you know, we couldn't get in to save them. So, you know, again, this program gives us the ability to get in and provide service inside the rooms.
Well, and let me jump in here on the positive alarm, Carl. One thing that we found out is prior to us installing this in the fire alarms, the office staff got kind of accustomed to the alarm panel making buzzes and noise, and nobody goes over to investigate it. Now with this 15-second delay where they can prevent the alarm from going off, it forces a staff member to go over to the panel and actually look to see what the panel is doing. So if it's identifying a pull station location, they instantly know what they need to do next. Whereas the old nuisance alarm or the old nuisance buzzing, where it was a low battery indication or some other supervisory tone, they would just kind of blow it off and wait for the facility staff to come down and fix the panel because it was being annoying. So this kind of forces our staff to actually be more active in what's going on in the front office as far as the alarm panel is.
Speaking of alarm activations, you know, students have been taught when they hear the fire alarm to get your stuff and get out of school as fast as you can. However, with the active shooter scenarios, it's you hear the sound and you hide basically. How have you guys been able to teach that effectively? I guess that's a question for Scott. And also, are the local authorities part of that drill and practice the rapid access program that you've actually put in place during those drills?
Well, part of our rapid access program, and this came out of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas requirements, is we do walkthroughs with fire, EMS, as well as representatives from the sheriff's office on an annual basis for each one of our campuses, so we can identify any of those deficiencies or positions or camera locations that we need to work on to continue to fortify the campus. And the other thing is we work with them on the drills. So the fire department is there to kind of as a representative of what information do they need for any type of alarms that go in. And Stoneman Douglas paper also required that we go through lockdown drills as well as fire drills. And it's kind of modified the way we do fire drills in the school campuses, because now it's more teacher involved instead of, oh, the alarm's going off, what do we do? And the staff in the schools are actually helping drive that, as well as the lockdown drills that they have to do for requirements to meet the Stoneman Douglas guidelines.
I will come back in and say where I certainly appreciate the Stoneman Douglas guidelines. I also want to remind everyone of 1958 on December 1st, Our Lady of Angels fire. I believe that's the correct date. And if I'm wrong by a day or two, I apologize. But we lost roughly 100 people in a fire. So it's important to get people out. That's why the positive alarm sequencing is successful. You've got a few seconds to acknowledge the alarm, 15-ish seconds, and then 3 minutes to verify. Otherwise, it's going to go into alarm and we're going to evacuate the building. And that's important because, you know, most people forget that while we have a number of shootings in the schools, I want to go back and look at that slide, 288. Every year we have over 4,000 fires in schools. Most of them are small and insignificant because of the efforts that we have done to minimize the impact of fire. And we've got to maintain that and maintain the ability to have the students leave the building in a timely fashion, especially with the amount of plastics. So I want to emphasize the other side of the issue.
Carl, I think that's an important point. And, you know, as we talk about planning, preparing, and practicing, right? And, you know, part of the people, roles, and training piece of the PASS approach is to make sure that, you know, teachers who are in a school building where they know there's a delay between the time a pull station is activated or a detector is activated and when the alarm goes off, they know when the alarm goes off, it's for real. You know, people, roles, and training. I talked about it early on. Having policies and procedures and people, roles, and training are the two most important things you can do in planning and preparing and practicing. So I appreciate what you said, Carl. You're absolutely right.
Okay, got a question for all three of you, and it has to do with the F word, funding. Is there, maybe this goes to Scott first, how exactly do you guys fund the Rapid Access Program? Is there federal money, state money? Is it the local budget? Is it a mixture of all the above? How have you guys been able to do it? And Mark, how do you guys see it happening throughout the country?
Well, in Collier, ours was funded through the Capital Improvement Project Fund that we get partially from the state of Florida and partly from the county tax dollars that we get.
There are state funds in most states available. There are federal funds. The STOP grant is one of them, or the STOP Act is one of them that Senator Hatch put together or sponsored right after the Parkland shooting. So, you know, part of what we're trying to do with PASS is give schools the tools and the information that they need to go after those grants. So I can tell you that there are numerous examples of school districts pulling together grant requests and getting seven-figure sums from either state or government funds. So there's, you know, if you don't know a grant writer, I think, Knox, you have grant writers. Do you not, Neil, that help with grants?
Yeah, we do have some language we can help people with.
Yeah. So there's money out there, and a lot of it goes unspent.
I also will go one step further and say that the Knox program, compared to so many of the others that I have seen marketed, is significantly cheaper. I mean, I don't want to say it's a giveaway, but to rekey the doors and buy the blue boxes for every school in Pasco County was only about $1,000 per school installed. And when you compare that to the $500 for the door peg system that I saw, that's $500 per door. You know, this is significantly cheaper. I mean, we were able to do all 89 schools in Pasco for about $1,000 a piece. So, I mean, I know that that's not a giveaway, but in government, that's not too bad.
Carl, question for you. You know, Knox has been around since 1975, and the focus has been on the firefighting community, and firefighters have kind of embraced the whole rapid access lockbox program out there. Have you seen a culture change that's had to take place with firefighters and fire departments to feel comfortable letting law enforcement hold keys?
No, as a matter of fact, that's probably one of the things that we've been very, you know, very, here in Pasco and in most jurisdictions I'm aware of, we use the key secure system. So our keys are well regulated, well controlled, and they're just not laying around loose. And what we're seeing with most of the law enforcement is that they're not putting the same emphasis on the key control. So that's caused a lot of concerns, as well as you know, our guarantee to the citizens is to the non-school buildings, you know, or non-government buildings. Our guarantee is that the fire department is the only ones with access, and we will make a record of when we access that box.
Scott, how have you been able to make sure or control key security with law enforcement? Collier?
Well, one of the things we actually implemented in Collier was we have what they call a go bag that's located in a predetermined location on the campus. And what this go bag entails during any type of evacuation, whether it's a lockdown drill or whether it's a fire alarm, one of the school administrators, either the principal, the assistant principal, is required to grab one of these go bags and take it out to the exterior of the campus. And they don a predetermined colored safety vest. And this is identified with law enforcement. So law enforcement knows they have not only extra keys that help them access the campus for the campus master and other areas of the campus, as well as electronic swipe cards, but they also have a roster that's updated on a regular basis for all the students that are supposed to be on campus. And they can use that to determine how many occupants they've got and so on and so forth as teachers go through and do their roll calls and everything for the classrooms around the area when they evacuate.
Okay. Question for Mark. Door hardware companies, have they come to the table with some solutions that could also help out with rapid access or be integrated with a Knox type program?
They have, and part of it is, you know, there's a lot of electronic access control out there, and a lot of schools are going to electronic access control for a number of reasons, mostly control. So they can control kind of who comes when, you know, on what day and what time, and you know, being able to get an audit trail. But the bottom line is, if the power fails, the access control system fails. So we're never going to get away from mechanical keys. And what the door hardware industry has done is develop patented keys, keys that can't be copied, and talking about key control policies and software, so you know who has keys. You know, there's a responsibility assigned with that. You know, you sign for your keys if you're going to get one. So yeah, there are a number of products that have hit the market. You know, I would say from a classroom standpoint, Carl touched on it a little bit earlier, the Sandy Hook Commission, and we have a mother of a girl who she lost her daughter in the Sandy Hook shooting on the team. The commission did publish the fact that no active shooter has breached a locked door. The challenge is that the old classroom style locks, you had to have a key and you had to put the key in the outside lever or knob in order to lock the door. You couldn't lock it from the inside. So the hardware companies have come up with what they call classroom security locks and a number of other products that help folks be able to secure their classroom doors without having to step out into harm's way in a hallway where something may be going on. So yeah, that's a good question, and there's a lot of stuff that's happened, you know, a lot of products that have been developed along those lines. So thank you for the question.
Okay, we did have a question that yes, there will be a recording of this session sent out to everybody who registered. Even those who registered and didn't attend will get a recording, so you will be able to see it, and we'll include contact information of all the speakers as well if you want to get back to any of them. Another question here: if electricity is paramount for system stability, is there a solar panel that would prevent the system from going down? Regular batteries are annoying and unstable. Does anybody want to take that one?
That's a great question. I'm not aware of anything, but that doesn't mean it's not out there. Really good question. I'm actually jotting down a note here, and I'll see what I can find out on that. Neil, I guess I could come back through you
Sure.
on a response, but good, really good question.
Another one here: we're running into the corridor to classroom doors purposely being left open due to the COVID pandemic. School districts are requesting a variance to allow. Any suggestions about security other than fire safety?
Wow. So we've got active shooter, fire protection, and COVID all coming to a catastrophic meeting in the middle of the school. Good luck. There is no good answer. You know, what the solution to one is the problem to the others.
I would say, you know, a lot of these problems can be fixed with money. You know, one of the, you know, you could put electronic door closers or wall magnets attached to a classroom door with a door closer on it that would either be tied into, you know, if they're fire rated, they need to be tied into a fire alarm panel. If they're not fire rated, they could be tied into a security system that would release the doors and have them close on the, you know, activation of either system. But that's an expensive solution.
Well, we have no more questions. We're about a minute away from closing. Do any of you three want to have any closing comments you want to provide?
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to present and be part of this panel discussion.
I agree with Carl. Thank you for allowing us to share some knowledge on the subject, and feel free to contact me or any of my other co-speakers with any other questions that may come up after we close out this webinar.
Thanks to Knox once more.
Yes, thank you, Knox.
Thank you, Knox.
Thank you to all of you. And we did get one question under the wire here, which might be best for Wendy. Who did you contact first about submastering the Knox box so we could have access to update keys?
The first person you have to contact is the fire department to discuss their keys, and they have to sign off on doing the submaster of their program.
Well, thank you all very much for attending. Thank you for all the people who are watching, and have a great day.